Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. So this one is going to be dedicated to the Siege of Terra, since we have the latest book that's going to be coming out this weekend called Echoes of Eternity by Aaron Dembski Bowden. I thought it'd be a really cool idea to do a summary of where we're up to this point. So if you want to jump in with Echoes of Eternity, this video can bring you up to date with all the characters, all the storylines, should I say the main characters and the main storylines of what's been happening at the Siege of Terra. So I'm just going to go through this in Legion order, give you all the lowdowns on what they've been doing at the Siege, what characters are being represented at the Siege as well. So let's jump in and let's get talking. Of course, this video is going to contain spoilers. I'm not going to have spoilers for Echoes of Eternity. I'm going to do that in a dedicated video sometime next week after I've actually sat down and read it. But this is going to have spoilers for every Siege book we've had so far, and also some of the Horus Heresy books. If you don't want to be spoiled, then please leave the video now. It is your first and only warning. So let's start with the First Legion, because the Dark Angels actually take part in the Siege of Terra, and to be fair, they're probably going to play one of the most important roles in the Siege of Terra. No, it's not Lionel Johnson. Lionel Johnson, along with Lehman Russ and the Space Wolves and the main force of the Dark Angels, are actually sieging the world of Barbarous, the Deathguad homeworld, as this siege is taking place. I'm sure they'll probably turn up towards the end of the siege, but at this moment in time, they're not actually here. The person who's actually leading the Dark Angel force is none other than Corswain. Corswain landed on Terra. There was this amazing scene where he burst through the atmosphere. The Emperor's ship was there. A bunch of Dark Angels descended down on the planet, and they're currently fighting to restore the Astronomicon on Terra. But there's something that Corswain doesn't know, because on the way to Terra, he stopped at the homeworld of Caliban, and Luther gave him reinforcements. Those reinforcements are actually loyal to Luther and not loyal to the Dark Angels or Corswain's plan. So there is a bigger story that's going to be happening in the last two books of the Siege of Terra. Moving on, we have the Third Legion, and as you probably would have guessed, Fulgrim is being Fulgrim. He took over like this hive and he turned it into like a kind of a pleasure kind of planet kind of thing, well, a pleasure city where the citizens were like comatose and the warp kind of sucked out their souls, and it was all this weird mad stuff. But his main story actually happens when he's recruited by Abaddon over something called the Saturnine Gambit. Now, the Saturnine Gambit is a plan by Rogel Dawn to basically trap the traitors and demolish them. This is designed to bring down Horus, so Rogel Dawn can actually destroy Horus and break the siege. But what happens is Abaddon leads the attack instead. Now, Abaddon goes around and recruits some of the best warriors taking part in the siege. He more or less brings the entirety of the Emperor's Children Legion, including Demon Primarch Fulgrim. Now, this attack consists of a two-pronged attack. You have Abaddon and the Justarian going underneath the walls in like siege drills, and they're going to like breach into some bits of the palace and then take the fight to the halls and hopefully try and bring down like the shield that's covering the palace so Horus can bombard it. But the main attack, and this part of the video, is Fulgrim's attack, and he launches his entirety of his legion at this part of the wall. There's, siege towers and stuff like that. It's going well. The wall is absolutely devastated, but that is a part of the trap. Dawn springs it, and the eliteness of Dawn and his defenses spring to life, and the Emperor's children are absolutely devastated. Their legion is basically taken out of the Siege of Terra. They suffer so much losses. But the great scene, the absolute perfection of this scene, is that Sigismund himself takes towards the fight and actually challenges Fulgrim. He actually gets a few hits in there and manages to cut Fulgrim and like slice his face, and Fulgrim is raging. Is like, how dare you? And before Fulgrim's about to bring his sword down and absolutely obliterate Sigismund, Rogel Dawn turns up and has one of the most greatest lines in the entire Siege of Terra. Basically, Rogel Dawn just drops it and says, Sigismund's courage sometimes outstrips his abilities. Mine does not. And then Fulgrim and Rogel Dawn have this epic clash on the wall. And I must add, at this time, Fulgrim's not actually in his demon form. It confirms now that Fulgrim can switch between Fulgrim where he was and Fulgrim Snake Boy, but he's not in his Snake Boy form as of yet. Him and Dawn have this amazing duel. Fulgrim's like trying to taunt him, but Dawn's just quiet and like, I'm just gonna kill you and that's it kind of thing. Absolutely fantastic. One of my best duels I've ever read so far at this point at the Siege of Terra. It's incredible. Anyway, Dawn manages to stab Fulgrim through his chest, and Dawn's like, I've won, I killed you. And then, you know, Fulgrim starts laughing, says, yeah, I can't die. And then he transforms into his snake form. And then Fulgrim's like, I'm sick of this. This is boring, because then Dawn reveals to him that everything is a trap. His legion is in ruins. And then Fulgrim's look around and he's like, oh my god, my legion is in ruins. And he just gets fed up and just slithers off. And then Rogel, Dawn and Sigismund go back to back as they are literally surrounded by the cream of the crop of the Emperor's children, Eidolon and everything like that. But we'll get to Eidolon's story with Sigismund's story and the Imperial Fist story, because there's a great thing that happens in this scene as well. Moving on to the Iron Warriors, because this is an interesting one. For me, the Siege of Terra was always going to be the Iron Warriors versus the Imperial Fist. It's like a chess match, but with human lives, with Space Marines, and the result is a winner or a loser. It's Horus or the Emperor. That's basically what we're playing with. And Perturabo actually takes this fairly good. You know, he's outmaneuvering Dawn, he's outmaneuvering the Imperials. Dawn is countering him in certain places and stuff like that. There's traps, there's back and forth. It's actually a really great storyline with not one of them actually throwing a weapon at each other or shooting at each other or clashing blades. It's all in the mind, which is fantastic. But the more that Perturabo goes on, the more he sees that this siege is just a damnation. It's his brother Primarchs who are damned to become these demons. Horus, who he loved, who he trusted, who he betrayed his father for, is just this wreck upon his throne, bubbling with power. Because the Saturnine Gambit fell and what happened with all that stuff, Horus basically kind of demotes Perturabo and elects that Mortarion lead some of the attacks, which Perturabo really takes in, and, you know, starts really like, how dare he kind of thing. And basically what happens is the Iron Warriors leave the siege. They actually just get up and leave. Perturabo's had enough. He's had enough of Horus. He's had enough of the traitors, the demons, everything on Terra. He's had enough with this. He can't control these monsters. He doesn't want to be a part of these monsters, so he leaves. Some Iron Warriors do stay, but the most of his legion actually leave, and this is one of the reasons why the Dark Angels were able to actually break in and actually land on Terra, because all the Iron Warrior fleet basically left out of orbit and they managed to break through. Perturabo does say that if Horus does win, then he's sure that Horus will find him and will kill him when he finally gets round to it. Next up, it is the White Scars, and boy oh boy, this probably has to be one of the greatest stories ever told involving Space Marines. The White Scars, they are just epic in every engagement they go to. Jagatai Khan is epic in every engagement that he's in. There's this scene where it's like the Ride of the Rohirrim, where the White Scars actually charge the Deathguard on the plains, but they don't charge them like just normally. They fly off a wall that's like 1,000 feet in the air or something strangely insane like that. They just literally launch themselves off, jet bikes, everything, Jagatai Khan at the front of it, you know, Chagoris. It's absolutely incredible. They're again, as the White Scars do, they're probably known to be fast attack. That's what they do. They're hitting, they're moving back, and one of the spaceports is taken by the Deathguard. And of course, this is where we have the famous duel between Jagatai Khan and Mortarion. Tripping me up over my own words here because of the excitement in my mouth. This amazing duel again. Mortarion is in his demon form. Jagatai Khan knows that he can't win against it. To win means death, and that's what he actually does. He sacrifices himself to get the killing blow on Mortarion. He sticks his sword through him, but of course Mortarion brings his scythe down and hits Jagatai. Mortarion is banished back to the warp. The spaceport is taken back by the White Scars, But Jagatai Khan is basically dead. He's taken back to the palace, and there's a little heartbeat, boop 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 boop, and Malkados does some sorcery thing, and he's basically alive, but he's more or less out of the siege going forward. Moving on to the Space Wolves, just like the Dark Angels, the Space Wolves do take part in the Siege of Terra, but it's only a watch pack, and they actually are defending the inner sanctum of the Imperial Palace along with Malkador. They have this interaction with Magnus, or some of the shards of Magnus, because Magnus breaks in to the Imperial Palace through like a gap in its like psychic barrier. We'll get onto that when we get to like the actual Magnus stuff, but they died defending that and just doing all that kind of stuff that Space Wolves do. But yes, there is a small watch pack actually active at the Siege of Terra and fighting in Leman Russ's name. Now the 7th Legion, hold your breath, because there's a lot of Imperial Fist stuff to go over on this one, a hell of a lot of stuff, because this series of books is all about the 7th Legion really defending the homeworld. Yes, you have the Blood Angels and the White Scars there, but it's mostly Rogel Dawn. You have Rogel Dawn, Cambadius, Fafnir, Ran, Archimus is there. Some massive characters. The main story is, of course, the defense of it. Rogel Dawn, like I said, with his back and forth, with Perch Rabo defending it. Rogel Dawn knows that he cannot win the siege. This is a story that we're given. He knows they cannot win. The only thing they're fighting for at the siege is time. Horus has an endless armor at his disposal. No matter what you kill, it's going to come back. It's demons. It's horrors of the warp. You can't completely kill that. So he's waiting for Gilliman and the rest of his brothers and this huge fleet that's supposed to be coming to arrive at Terra and try to defeat Horus's force in orbit. That way, Horus is dead and the demon forces and all the power will then vanish from the planet. Cambadia sadly dies at the Siege of Terra. He has this epic last stand on the bridge where he's fighting like a horde of World Eaters. He's taking them down one by one, smashing them, killing them, taking their heads off. It's absolutely epic, but just a horde of them is just too much, and he's just consumed by him, and he dies where he stands. Again, a great Imperial Fist, no backward step. You got Fafnir Ran doing what Fafnir Ran does the best with his axes, going around killing things, doing all the assaults and stuff. He's on the walls. He actually has this cool little interaction with Sanguinius. Sanguinius descends, and he's like, oh my god, an angel, kind of thing. Great stuff. But the main story here is Sigismund. Sigismund. Now, let's go back to what I said with the 3rd Legion. So, Fulgrim has just left. He's slivered away. Rogel Dawn and Sigismund, it's just them two. They are back-to-back. Son and father. Back-to-back, ready to kill. Eidolon's there and some of the upper echelons of the Emperor's children. I think they're surrounded I think it's like 80 or 90 Emperor's children, but like the top tier Emperor's children warriors. They fight. Rogel Dawn says, try me. He goes in, he balls in, he's cutting them down one by one. Eidolon and Sigismund actually have a 1v1, and Sigismund just Sparta kicks Eidolon off the wall. He disappears. I don't know if he dies. Of course, he can't die because we know he's around in 40k, but maybe he's like out of like the 30k siege. Maybe he's taken back to his ship, and the apothecaries do something. No idea, but we don't see like an end to him. We just see him being kicked off the wall. Sigismund and Dawn kill all the Emperor's children, and then Dawn basically says to Sigismund, right, I need you to go out and kill. That is basically it. Go out and kill them all, my son. It's such a great and emotional scene. He calls him his most beloved, his most favoured son. I was nearly crying at the time because I was like, Dawn, I'm your most favoured son. Only kidding. But it was really, really good. It was absolutely amazing. On his way to do this, he gathers people like Fafnir Ran, some absolute badass Templar brethren, all the people he can gather to take this war to the traitors. He's stopped by one of Malkador's agents, and this is where he's gifted the black sword, like his sword, and it's kind of like a ring of power moment from like Lord of the Rings, where it's like whispering it to him and that kind of like weird like thing. Well, that's what I took it for anyway. And he grips a sword and he just knows it's like, this is the sword, and he goes out and he completely beasts everyone. I mean, the scene is just perfection upon perfection upon perfection. There's like this entire story of this captain of the Sons of Horus, who's basically going around defeating all these, captains and like notable warriors. And he's like, oh, Sigismund's on the field. I'll take his head as well. And then it flips over to Sigismund's chapter, and this captain comes at Sigismund, and Sigismund barely even reacts to him. It's like 1-2, bang, the guy's dead. And this guy is like a complete badass, but Sigismund takes him out in like 2 strokes, and he doesn't even notice he's killed the guy because it's just like, I've killed one, on to the other. Again, fantastic scene. I'm not doing it justice in this summary, but really, absolutely fantastic scene. The next big story arc for Sigismund is he actually takes on Khan the Betrayer at the siege, and this is what we've all been waiting for. Him and Khan fight. It's an absolutely, again, epic duel. Sigismund comes away as the winner. He like chops all his like the legs and the arms off Khan. Khan's like, you are more broken at me because you have no emotion. Because Sigismund's like, no, there's no emotion anymore. You have betrayed us all. There is only eternal war at this point. When it comes to the Night Lord, Kurz not around because he's floating in space like a door somewhere. Absolute loser he is. There is a small contingent of Night Lords. I say small contingent. Probably a lot of Night Lords, but, not the entire legion's worth of Night Lords. Fighting on Terra, led by someone called the Painted Count. This is a hilarious character who thinks himself an absolute badass. He gets all his power from like this demon sword or this demon weapon. And he meets Ralderon on the wall, and he wants to make a name for himself. He's like, Ralderon, I'm the Painted Count, Ralderon, I'm going to take you. Then Ralderon turns around and like, never heard of you. Then Ralderon then beats the living out of this guy. I'm not even sugarcoating it, right? He absolutely just goes full ham on him. And it is hilarious. The Painted Count by the end of it is like, please, Ralderon, no, take me as a prisoner, no. And then Ralderon, again, just yeets him off the wall, and he just falls to his death. Well, he doesn't fall to his death. The demon in the sword takes his soul and, rips him apart and stuff like that. And he's got to have like an imprisonment with a demon or some weird stuff. But yeah, that's the Night Lord, basically, summaries that we've had so far. The Blood Angels have actually been kind of quiet so far. We've had little bits of glimpses, like I said, Ralderon with the Painted Count. Sanguinius takes on a bunch of Titans. He actually spears a Warlord through the head and just completely just annihilates it. And all the other Titans are like, nope, not having any more of this. Let's get out of here. Sanguinius at this point knows he doesn't die. He can't die. So he's just throwing himself at everything that comes along with him. Of course, the next book, which I'm doing a summary for now, The Echoes of Eternity, is all going to be about the Blood Angels and their triumph. The big hint in the books we've had so far is that Angron is going to be squaring up against Sanguinius. This is where the story is leading now, and I am 100% certain that's going to happen in Echoes of Eternity. No Iron Hands, because Ferrus Manus got ahead of himself on Isfan 3. So yeah, the Iron Hands have played no major part in the Siege of Terra. Sorry for you Iron Hands fanboys. When it comes to the World Eaters and Angron, oh boy, oh boy. All I have to say is that Angron basically turned up to the Siege of Terra riding the Conqueror like it was a surfboard, and he was getting some sick waves. It was one of the greatest scenes I've ever seen with a demonic Primarch. It was hilariously awesome. They fired Angron from the Conqueror because he was too busy killing everyone on the Conqueror. They literally shot him out of a cannon down to the planet, like, just get out of here and just go and kill people. And that's what Angron's been doing. He's just been literally butchering everything and everyone he comes across. No one can stop him. And this is why I keep saying now, with the Blood Angels and Sanguinius, the Eternity Gate, this is where the final showdown's going to be, and Angron is going to face his brother Sanguinius. Khan, as I mentioned, he's been butchering people, fighting people, but he meets his end, of course, at Sigismund's blade. Guilliman and the Ultramarines, at this point, all we know is that they're heading towards Terra. They're fighting their way there. Apparently, Guilliman has assembled a huge fleet, one of the biggest fleets he can actually gather. And when it arrives, if it arrives, then of course that could turn the tide and actually defeat Horus above the planet and lift the siege. Now, with the Mortarion and the Deathguard, we kind of really know what happened. With Mortarion, he was killed by the Khan, banished back into the warp. But what he said to his second in command, Typhus, and at this point, Typhus doesn't care what Mortarion says, he basically ordered Typhus to take the Deathguard and to go fight Corswain and stop Corswain from retaking the Astronomicon and relighting the beacon. But once Mortarion is killed and banished back to the warp, Typhus decides to take the Deathguard and head towards the palace because he wants to carve out his own glory and become like a notable character for overthrowing the Emperor and the Imperium. Moving on to the Thousand Sons and Magnus, this is probably one of the most interesting story arcs we have at the Siege. It was a really big twister for me. So basically, Ahriman and Magnus, they're floating around the palace looking to how to get in because Magnus wants to retrieve a shard of himself that is in the palace that we know as Janus. Janus actually goes on to go and found or be one of the founding or the founding Grand Master of the Grey Knights. So Magnus wants to break into the palace and he finds like this little psychic gap in the palace, and him and Ahriman go in. There's a lot of things that happen. Malcador is turned to dust, then resurrected and stuff like that. But basically what we find out in the story is that the Emperor actually planned for this. He actually left that gap in there so he could confront Magnus, and he tries to bring Magnus back over to the side of the Loyalists, and Magnus is actually going to take the deal from the Emperor. He's like, okay, I'm going to rejoin you. And then the Emperor says, but there is a condition. You have to kill all your sons because they've been tainted by the warp and, you know, all the flesh changes and stuff like that. And Magnus basically refuses, and the Emperor just yeets them out the palace. He's like, all right, get the hell out of here, kicks them out, and they're like, whoa! And they're like, they fly off and stuff like that. So basically, that's the summary of the Thousand Sons story. And there's a lot more to it, but that is the summary. The main honcho, of course, is Horus and his legion, the Sons of Horus. And as I stated, we had the Saturnine Gambit, where it's a two-prong attack. We know that Fulgrim's attack failed, and Abaddon and all the troops that he assembled with him were in the siege drills, and they actually break into the palace. They're moving through the corridors, and just like Rogel Dawn planned, he initiates his trap, and all of a sudden, him, the Justarian, all the great warriors that you've known are completely cut off. They're being absolutely butchered. Garrow's there with his sword, taking down people after people. It's an absolute just great massacre of the Sons of Horus. Abaddon's like, we can still win this, and then the next thing is like, maybe get back and stuff like that. Abaddon's about to die. Garrow's got him. He's about to cut off his head, and the teleport Homer activates, and he comes back into the siege drill, and it's actually kind of a sad scene because Abaddon's like, let me go back. Let me go back, please. Because Abaddon's story is basically he wants to die a warrior's death. He wants to fight with warriors. He hates what's happening to his legion. They're all being corrupted by chaos. He sees demons, you know, getting involved. He doesn't see that as an honorable battle. This is tainted. When he looks at Horus now, Horus is on his throne. Horus is fighting his own little war with the Emperor in his mind with all the psychic stuff. And it's just like a bloated, just unrecognizable father that he once beloved, and he's like, you know, Horus is weak and stuff. You know, that thought is now entering his mind of how Horus is failing them all. And as I mentioned, Horus is basically just sat in the vengeful spirit. He's having this mind war with the Emperor because you'd argue that is the most important war that's actually happening at the Siege of Terra. So he can't actually take to the field and fight amongst his sons, amongst the other Primarchs, lead them from the front because he's actually fighting his own war. The word bearers are there in name. Lorgar's not there. Lorgar wasn't allowed to come to the Siege of Terra because he was planning to betray Horus and become the War Master of Chaos and lead it, but Horus found out and basically bitch slapped him and said, right, you're not coming now, be gone, you absolute bastard. So he wasn't allowed to come. Some of his sons actually joined Horus, and they've been fighting and stuff like that, summoning demons and being absolute bastards, as you expect from the word bearers. Vulcan is at the Siege of Terra, and I would argue Vulcan has one of the most important jobs. Vulcan is with the Emperor at the Webway. He's holding back the demon hordes along with the Custodes and the Sisters of Silence in that underground war, that secret war that's happening. There is some of his sons on Terra who accompanied Vulcan towards Terra. They're out fighting and just trying to help the general civilians and basically help out where they can. They don't have a massive force there. I think there's about 3 of them, basically. So they just attach themselves to certain loyalists or Imperial Guard regiments and just fight where they're needed. And lastly, the Alpha Legion. We don't really have anything to do with the Alpha Legion. There is hints that the Alpha Legion are active during the siege, like there's some operatives, a part of the Imperial Army that are going in, causing a ruckus, let's say, causing mayhem. But as for Alferis or Omegon, of course, one of them was killed by Rogal Dawn around Pluto. We don't know which one is alive. There's still debates. Is it Alferis? Is it Omegon? I'm not going to get into this one. But one of the Primarchs is still alive. It is hinted at that one of the Primarchs, or the Primarch, let's say, or Alferis, or Omegon, whatever you want to call it, is actually with Ollius Pius and John Grammaticus on their way to face Horus and, you know, the Emperor and stuff like that. Is there more to this? Who knows? I'm sure more stuff is going to be revealed in the future. All right, Chaprunios, that is enough waffling from me. Thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. If you've got any questions or anything like that, you want me to go into more detail, post it down below, and I'll do my best to try and explain it to you. If you've got any theories or anything what could happen in the next books, let me know. I like to read them and stuff like that. But hopefully this video's helped and it brings you up to date for Echoes of Eternity. See you now. Have a great day, and bye-bye.